So I ask you guys to please read through the two submissions that you did. What are your overall impressions?
I think they definitely got, the second one was stronger than the first. I think our writing's getting a little bit better now that we've designated someone to do some editing and just go through most of it.
Cool. Hi, Teresa.
Ralph just asked how we feel about our first few submissions.
Okay.
I was saying I think our writing's getting a little bit better just because we've assigned you to be the editor, kind of. We're not assigned. I hope you're willing to, I feel like it's getting stronger, and now that we kind of have a more direct view on how, like, what the assignment really is, like, not that we're following through with the full Betties thing.
Cool. Yeah, it takes a bit of practice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what were some other thoughts about what was really good from an executive point of view? You're the president and somebody puts this on your table to read. What do you guys think was really good about it?
I have something. So we received from Bold Betties to Teresa, kind of some data and slides about what they're looking for. So there were two questions on their, areas of growth. One that I think we addressed two of them. The other two, I kind of want to ask the group to see if we should include anything about that. But it said, can we figure out how to get greater chapter leader engagement and get more adventures in Meetup? And the second one was, how do we accelerate chapter growth? So I feel like the first one we're going to address with our research. The second one we can make suggestions for after we collect, if we were to collect data. So I feel like we're hitting on those 2 points from what they want. And the other two questions, which could be a little bit, they could be different topics, but the first one was, is the market size for women who care about the equity large enough? And the second one was, how do we ensure sufficient attendance at adventures? I didn't know if we should loop those in at all to address those.
No, that's a great point, especially with the diversity and inclusion parts, like when they're talking about the market share. Absolutely.
And I feel like part of being a good leader is getting people to your events. Like the second or the last point that you said of how can we guarantee that there's attendance at these adventures? Part of being a good chapter leader is drawing in people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming you're not asking me to answer the question for you guys. Is something to discuss amongst yourselves? Or are you asking me to answer the question?
I mean, I guess I was, I think I want everyone's feedback. I feel like we're focused on the first two, and having a topic that is honed in on something is good. I feel like at least the first one too is the market size for women who care about equity large enough. I feel like that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, because you're getting into market and industry questions as opposed to specific issues about the leaders themselves. Although if you focus on is there something about the leaders or the leadership team that helps us to function better, and you narrow it down that way, that would certainly work. Am I making sense?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, totally.
Okay. Because, there's a bunch of different reasons why you might want a leader to be good at things. It could be organization development, helping people inside the organization become stronger, increasing communications, minimizing conflict, or you can also trying to develop market share. But you want to make sure that you keep that separate because there's a whole bunch of strategies that you can look at for developing market share, right? And a whole bunch of different ways you can do that. But we want to stay away from that. We want to look at what are the issues of the leaders themselves in the organization. What their ultimate goal is, I think, from what I've read so far, isn't so important as it is to address the issues of how the leaders function. Am I getting that straight?
That's perfect response. Yeah.
Well, we're done then. Thank you.
I guess I feel like I think we're doing a good job of incorporating the learnings. I guess where I'm struggling is the overall, like, as I know, like even in the first one, we had to like narrow down the scope. And I feel like with each one of these, it's getting wider, bigger and bigger. And
Yes.
that's where my struggle is.
I think that's fair enough. Let me duck the question a little bit for the moment, but let me also say this. The point of looking at all these different facets and aspects of organizations and what's going on in organizations, the goal was to have you guys look at a whole bunch of different things. And the job for your team is, okay, here's all this stuff that we learned. Okay, now what's important for the problem we're trying to address? Because it can't possibly be everything, right?
Right.
So then you can get it down to, and let's say, I'm just pulling a number out of a hat. Let's say you get it down to 10 things, 10 issues, 10 ideas that you guys think are important. Then you look at, okay, we got 10 of them. Now, which of these 10 really matter? And here's what I mean. Think of yourself as executives in an organization. What 10 things would you want to consider and focus on in a study? What would you want to have assessed for the organization? Now, it's conceivable that all 10 are really important. In that case, your research project, the proposal, what you're proposing would be a mighty big research project. Maybe that's what the organization needs. That's a possibility. Maybe it doesn't need to be that broad. That question is one you guys want to discuss amongst yourselves. You can also talk to Brooke and I about it, obviously, and get our feedback. Ultimately, what you need to decide is, where should we focus?
Mm-hmm.
How's that as an answer?
That totally makes sense. And I just wanted to, I guess, because I feel like I wanted to make sure that was the vision for the final as we go through this. So
that works for you?
Yes.
I have just a piggyback off of Teresa. Just take, for instance, our last write-up on diversity and cultural dexterity. Is it okay if our write-up basically says how we see this fitting into the organization, and then we're suggesting further research in this area instead of bringing it all the way in to the, our original research questions. Is that okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we don't need to have a definitive conclusion.
No.
Good to know.
You do need to have a definite proposal for what you will research and why. But you certainly can't come to a conclusion because you're not doing the research, right? So there's no expectation for you guys to come at the end of this project and say, well, here's what Betty should do, okay? Bold Betties no, you can't know, and you're not supposed to know. What you are suggesting is, what should Bold Betties look at? And let me add, you could change your research question completely as a result of all the things you've learned. Yes? Why not, right? How's that feeling? Becca's kind of looking at me going like, what are you talking about? What are you doing to me? Leave me alone. I've already had a class. I don't need any more of this.
No, I was just thinking of it more in scientific method terms, that we're more so determining our hypothesis and not our conclusion.
Definitely. And you're also providing hypothesis and how you're going to test the hypothesis. What do you propose to test the hypothesis you have? Steph, you were going to say something?
Oh no, I just took a deep breath. I do think that our question, like your first feedback you gave to us was that it was pretty broad. I think that we could probably be a little more specific in our ask, but it could also get more specific in the depths of it. So
Yeah.
Steph, I agree. I think that becoming more specific in our ask is more so determining what our control is, again, in terms of scientific method. So I think you're right, yeah.
Consider it this way. If you go to look at 10 different issues, how long would your research take per person? Right? If you send out 5 questionnaires, let's just as a easy example, look at the big 5. How long does it take to fill out that survey?
Couple minutes.
How long does it take to fill out an equity survey? How long does it take to fill out an engagement survey? So think about how long it would take each person to fill out a survey and answer the questions on the survey. It's only going to take, say, 30 minutes, really, given what I perceive from you guys is the commitment that the ladies at Bold Betties have. That's not so bad, right? If it's going to take an hour and a half, that's a little trickier, isn't it? Because people will get bored and say, I don't want to fill this out anymore. How am I doing?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure this is making sense to you.
Yeah, I think it's very beneficial. I feel each week we're working through a few more questions.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how we can narrow down our specific ask. I kind of like the question of what characteristics are necessary or valued in a Bold Betties leader, but I think how we determine that answer is that's apparent through surveys and through other things. So
Yeah.
And I think that's, yeah, like making sure we're focused in that, like, because I think it's easy to go outside of that scope with all of the stuff that we're doing and just have to rein ourselves back in to focus on that specific question, or if we, monitor it or edit it at all.
Well, it becomes a matter of talking about what is going on at Bold Betties and prioritizing what are the important pieces.
Yeah.
So I'll shut up.
Oh. What did you have anything specific, like any other specific feedback for us, or?
Sure. Let me share my screen with you, okay? All right, let's take a quick look. This is what you guys submitted to me on the individual differences. Let me talk about the writing that you did, and we'll go from here down to here. Your expository writing is good. I think I talked about expository writing as being an academic word I love. From a practical perspective, I started to read and I looked at it and my first reaction was, how is it relevant? You can see my first, where's my little mouse guy? Come back here. There we go. How is it relevant? You outlined the survey. Okay, now why does it matter? That was my immediate first thought when I read it through the first time. I'm going, as a manager, as an executive, why do I care about any of this stuff? What's this openness? Okay, long-term extroversion. What does this matter to me? So when you presented this, you got into all this personality stuff, but I didn't know why. Then, as I read through it, look at my second comment here. Okay, I see you're tying B5 into Big 5 into diversity, which I said is a tough task indeed. But here I'm starting to get it. As a reader, always tell your reader right up front, we're looking at the Big 5 because we think it will influence diversity. We want to look at emotional intelligence, how it relates to that, and we're going to outline why it matters, right? That old trick that they always talk about. Tell them what you're going to tell them. tell them, and then conclude by telling them what you told them, right? It's an old saw for writing, and it's also a great saw for presenting. Here's what we're going to look at today. Where's my arm? It's disappeared. I'm frightened. Here's what we're going to talk about today. Here's why it matters. Here's how we're going to show you how to apply it. Then you walk through and give your audience that in your presentation, and then you repeat it at the end. Why? Because human beings need to hear things over and over again for them to really sink in. And executives are even worse. They need to have their hands held even more. So just to provide you an overall structure. Now, let me dig into this a little bit more. When you're talking about diverse chapter leaders, a question came to my mind. If I understand correctly from the first time we talked, each chapter has an individual leader, yes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you develop, and bear with me on this is just what's going through my brain. If you develop diversity across all chapter leaders, right? You step back and go, how many Big Betty leaders are there? Roughly.
43, I think.
43. So we have 43 leaders, and the diversity level within those 43 leaders is quite high. You can actually measure levels of diversity in a team if you really want to. There's measures for that. So we've got really high diversity across all the teams or across all the leaders. Now, here's the piece that's got me thinking. The leader in Denver, let's say it's a Hispanic woman who is 58 years old who has lost a leg. Now, how is she going to relate to a 21-year-old woman who's white and has lots of money and can go run around in the bush? Are you seeing my point? So here was my, go ahead. So here was my question. What do you think of the idea of having teams of chapter leaders? Then you can have the diversity in Denver. Now you've got 5 different women or 6 different women. You have a high level of diversity in the Denver team who can relate to all the different people in the Denver area.
So they have these things called alpha Betties, which are kind of like the support team for the chapter leaders. And they do some of the, they lead some of the events themselves as well.
Okay. Let me see if I've got this straight, please, Teresa. You've got a main leader for the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
She has a team of women that help her out to do the activities within the chapter.
Yes.
And this could be 6 to 10 women on that team?
Probably, yeah, depends on the market, but yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So you can look for diversity within that team. So here's my question to you. Is diversity within that team of alpha Betties the most important thing? Sometimes people say that the team should be the basic fundamental level of analysis in an organization. Individuals maybe not so important, but teams are more important. So when you're looking at diversity, should you be looking at it at a team level for each place? I'm not asking you to answer that question, but I am asking you to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Something for you guys to think about. And I know it's a little thick. You've had a long day already, but put that one aside as something to think about. Now, in here, what happens is you've got EI and the Big Five. Remember, they're correlated. Everybody's been hot about emotional intelligence for the last 10, 20 years as the big thing that answers how behaviors are driven. Well, it turns out the Big Five's been explaining that for the last 50 years. Okay, so I'm being picky with you. You need to measure both. I'm going to argue just do the big five, leave the emotional intelligence behind. I know it's scary. Everybody still talks about EI as the big thing, but be groundbreakers. Say, we don't need emotional intelligence. We have the big five, which has more reliability and validity, right? Which Becca's going to tell you is a very good thing, right?
She's not on right
Becca will tell you that, yeah.
now. Okay.
And here, through the qualitative assessment, we will try to understand what degree of self-concordant impacts the motivation in becoming both a chapter leader and then in driving success as one. Now you've come in with this new idea, self-concordance. Since Bold Betties is a value-driven organization, we hypothesize there will be high consistency between pursuit of achieving chapter leaders' goals and personal interests and core values. 3, 4, 2, 3, and 4. Chapter leaders, we will also explore the intent of self-efficacy impact success, and if 30 further efforts to grow self-efficacy such as training, shadowing, and encouraging are necessary. 5, you've given us 5 different constructs that you're going to consider in the last paragraph. So if you're going to do that, you need to tickle those out and expand them and explain why all 5 of them are important. See my point?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, holy crap, now this team wants to look at a whole lot of measures here, but I don't know why. I mean, I sort of know why because I'm not stupid and I understand the material, but the executive you're presenting to probably won't. Not because they're stupid, but they don't understand the material and they're going, okay, self-efficacy, self-concordance, what is all this stuff and why do I care? See how you scunched it in there? So think about that, and that gets you to that question that Teresa brought up before. Holy smokes, we're getting all this stuff all of a sudden now. What are we supposed to do with it? And so, you're good. And so here's a place where you can think about, well, which ones matter? Which ones are the most important? Why do we care about this one or that one? We good?
Mm-hmm.
Onward. I don't want to beat you guys to death if you've just come out of a class. So I'm trying to be cognizant that your brain's been put through a lot already. So let's look at the addition in teams. Again, the writing is getting much, much better. It tends to be more expository, telling us about all the different pieces. But here is the first thing I noticed. When I read this, all right, so I'm going, the purpose of this addendum is to explore the impact of team culture and management of the Bold Betties chapter leaders. We hypothesize that the team management and culture play a big role in effective chapter leaders. Management is an individual activity, culture is an organization level thing. But further research beyond the scope of this proposal needs to be conducted to confirm this. So you're not going to be looking at teams at all. That's the first impression I had. I'm not chastising you guys here. This is just what I got. I'm going, well, maybe not. There's no reason you must look at team issues. They may just not apply in this case. That's cool. You wouldn't be the first team of people or group of people that go into an organization and say, you know what? Teaming isn't the issue here. Something else is the problem. Wow, 1,700 miles. If I not sweet, go away. So then I'm reading through the rest. Now you're going in and you're telling me team design and management are changing along with societal changes. You know, traditionally teams have been bound by manager-defined constraints and air filters. Our society is shifting to a less. So here you spend this whole paragraph outlining 4D teams. All right. For traditional 4D teams, there are 3 distinctive events known as leadership, levers, lifespan. Okay, you're outlining that again, but why do I care? Why does this matter? Well, here you get into it a little bit more. Members communicate and support each other. via Slack management and give updates to via monthly newsletters. There's also an annual chapter leader retreat, which only 30% of chapter leaders attend. We believe that a team relaunch should happen. So you are going to look at teams, right? So I'm reading through all this going, okay, so they do want me to consider teams. Don't do that to your reader, please, right? Executives are going to get PO'd with you. Going, you're telling me you're not, now you're telling me you are. So be careful with this kind of stuff. Leaders can be a serious pain in the ass when they get this. All right. So there's supposed to be a relaunch, and you think this is going to motivate the individual chapter leaders to work harder on the collective goals and also improve how they feel about themselves. I get this. So you're going to propose doing research here because we don't know for sure that you're right, right? Agreed?
Yes.
Theoretically, it follows, right? But is that a real problem for big Betties? Right? Bold Betties. Is that bold Betties really have that as an issue? This is why you're thinking about research. If you think it's true, now you're going to have to figure out, how are we going to find out? How are we going to measure it? Qualitatively, quantitatively? That question now comes up to you guys. And you go, after relaunching Bold Betties management, we'll need to monitor the chapter leaders team to prevent common pitfalls of teams. And you get into what all the mistakes are, regular check-ins. That's great, but that's more of a conclusion, right? This is what the principles that we're showing you suggest is true, but we don't know if it even matters for Bold Betties. Am I making sense? Okay. Effective teams can have a big impact on an organization performance. We recommend Bold Betties conducts research to look at the impact of team on chapter leader success and invest resources in relaunching and managing the teams to increase engagement and help the organization achieve its goals. All right, I get it. And so how are you going to carry out that research? That's what your proposal needs to look at. That gets us back to that original question. What are we putting in as contact? Well, you're going to propose how you're going to carry out this research, right? Are you going to do it quantitatively, qualitatively, and why? Tell us why the team stuff is important. Tell us how you're going to do it and why that's the best way to find out about the teaminess stuff. How are we doing?
Well, so Ralph, can I be pretty direct in the question here? When
Of course.
we get these additional team addendums, without having conducted the research or without really knowing how what we learn applies to Bold Betties, what do you think the best way is for us to structure our one-page addendums without sounding like we're making recommendations without first doing research?
Well, there's an easy answer. Don't make the recommendations, right? Just say, oh, these ideas suggest that this is worth looking at. Here's how we're going to look at it. Done. Right? Does that answer the question?
It does. It's one of the things that I know that we struggled with teams, and then is this inclusivity part also is how do we tie it all together to where we're not just like reading a paper and regurgitating, but actually making sense of it and applying knowledge.
You want an answer to that question? Hard work, thinking, good communication amongst your team members, thoughtfulness, stepping back and going, why does this matter? How does it matter? And what are the most important things? There's your questions. And as professionals, those are the questions you need to ask yourself. Professional managers, professional researchers of individuals in organizations, or teams in organizations, or organizations as a whole. And I'll add to that, I hope that made sense, and I'll add to that that's really hard. That's not like, let's throw it off in 5-10 minutes over a couple of beers. That really does require a lot of time, effort, and energy. And I would encourage you guys, when you're talking about it, ask Brooke and I about it as well, so that we can help guide you through that process. We don't expect you to do this all on your own. We expect you, when you do this, to get stuck and go, WTF? That should be your response given your level of experience. That's absolutely where you should get to a number of times through this. And then you come to us, and because we're extremely wise and talented and experienced, we can help you get through it. Or, you know, at least we got some stuff to offer you, and we can provide you some guidance. And how's that? Does that make sense for you without getting too abstract on you?
Ralph,
It makes
WTF has been my reaction a lot of times.
Yeah, it is when I get up in the morning.
Ralph, I have a quick question. So we start off in our research proposal that we're going to do research to identify common characteristics of successful chapter leaders. And then we make suggestions to measure engagement. And now teams, I mean, is the list getting too long for us? Like, is this adding up to those 10 things we're looking at? Should we hone this down even more?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
Because I don't know all the things you want to consider yet. I'm starting to get a picture of it. You've got inclusivity still coming in and ethics still coming in, right?
Yeah.
Right? And I know it's a pain in the ass. And once you've got all those pieces together, now start talking with us and going, okay, we think these things matter. Does it make sense that these things would matter? That's where you communicating with us needs to be important. Maybe we need to have a couple more meetings as we go along here. And maybe you guys should call them. And it doesn't have to be everybody. It can be one or two people at a time. And they don't have to be long meetings. They can be short. Could be a phone call, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just say, okay, here's what we're thinking, here's where we're confused. And then as a team, ultimately, you have to decide which ones matter the most. Otherwise, I'm answering the question for you, and where's the fun in that? Right? I'm going to stop sharing the screen a little bit. There we go.
What else, guys?
The great.
Ralph, will you send us
Yes.
a link to this recording? Because my internet's been crap tonight, and I feel like it a lot.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry that your internet's cropping out. That's a pain in the ass, especially after you've already worked with Scott and you're getting pretty frazzled on that, I bet. And now you're getting frazzled for another 45 minutes.
This is super helpful. I'm just processing it all right now. So I think
It's
that's
absolutely
all
helpful.
my brain can take at this point.
It's worth the frazzle for sure.
No, it's good. It's very, very helpful feedback.
Yeah.
Well,
Nuts. Just need to
thank you.
process it.
I'm glad it's helpful. Oh. Is that somebody in the background, or one of you guys not coming through clear?
I don't know what that was. Quick question for the group. If I created a Google Doc and just like put down our notes from this, and we all kind of
Yes.
regurgitated what we took from it, does that work?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Great.
Love it.
Thanks for always creating the Google Docs, by the way.
Yeah.
Not always, but you're welcome.
Yes, thank you. And you guys know that I like to just like brain dump and puke stuff out. So that's awesome.
In my opinion, it's a really good way to do it. Just puke your ideas onto a piece of paper and then keep looking through it and combing through those ideas till you find the ones that make sense and get rid of the ones that you don't think make sense.
Mhm.
Best way to write, it's the best way to develop your ideas. And also, if you just want to send me a few pages of stuff you're starting to put together and just going, well, what do you think of this melange of words? I'm good with that. Don't worry about, well, Ralph's going to sit there and grade against us because he's looking at all this stuff. When you've got some stuff to hand in, yeah, that's got to be tickety-boo. But when you're just throwing stuff together and trying to get your heads wrapped around ideas and you just want to throw things at me, yeah, I'm good. I do that with my, you guys haven't met Louise. There's no reason you would. Louise and I do that with each other when we write papers, right? We throw stuff together and then we have each other read it. And we're not 100% in the same area with our research stuff, but we understand stuff and we can read it and we can go, this is such bullshit, Ralph. Get this out of here. Right?
What area does she do?
Health policy is her primary area, health policy and health administration. Right now she's doing the OB course and the HR course at the undergraduate level here. Yeah.
Cool.
She's also got a degree in organization development, an undergraduate degree in finance, and a master's degree in gerontology. Woman's, yeah, right?
You guys must have the smartest dogs in Gunnison for all that they get to listen to.
You know what makes our dogs so smart? They just ignore us. Let me wrap up for you guys. First of all, you're doing a really good job. Second of all, what you're doing is difficult. You're looking at mushy human interaction stuff. It's extremely hard to understand humanoids. We're just so complex and so hard to look at. I don't mean in terms of visually necessarily, but how and what motivates us, why we behave the way we do and what we do. This is really hard work. Second of all, third of all, what I'm hearing is that you guys are starting to understand that you need to look at a whole bunch of different concepts, and you're going to take these concepts and start to narrow them down to determine which concepts, which ideas matter the most right now for Bold Betties. That may be different in a year, but right now. And you're also understanding the fourth thing, that what you need to do is once you determine what the important factors are, you're going to outline how you think it's best to do research on those factors, and then you're finished with your work. Did I mention you're doing a really good job?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions and stuff I can answer right now? I know you guys are burnt. Mentally, you're cooked. It's been a long evening. So I'm good to leave it at this, and then we can talk more. Sorry, I'm gonna go aside. Teresa, have you already got your Christmas stockings up?
Oh yeah, we decorated this weekend. We go all out.
That's really
Look at
nice.
the tree.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, very cool.
But it's
I put my tree in my
I
office
only have
this year.
half the lights.
I did my tree at work because I spend more time there than at my house.
Aw.
It's not a bad idea.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
See you guys.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thanks, Ralph.
Keep at it. Don't be shy to ask questions, shoot emails, meet with me briefly, whatever it takes. Please, don't be shy.
All right.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Well,
Back
thank
to
you.
you. I'll send you a link to the meeting.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.